All right, everybody, this is Surayya from Purposeful Professional Media, and we are back with a podcast for the people, your career, and the culture. I'm very, very excited to have today's special guest. Y'all know I have the most special people on this podcast, and I'm super blessed to get these people often through LinkedIn or just like random connections. Shout out to Daniela Lockhart because she connected me to today's guest. So please, Neysa, introduce yourself to the people on the podcast.
Hi, everyone. I'm Neysa. I'm a transformational leadership coach, and my mission is to dispel the lie of scarcity. I talk about abundant thinking, money mindset, and I firmly believe that abundant thinking is at the cornerstone of a great leader. I'm really passionate about supporting folks to go from great to amazing, from amazing to incredible, because that's often where the support dwindles. It's when things get really massive, really big, and all of a sudden, no one can help you. There's tons of help when you're starting something at the beginning, not a lot of help when you're in the thick of that very goal that you were manifesting. So that is where I stand, and that's where it's all the more important to maintain an abundant mindset because you are impacting so many lives at that level. So that's the work that I do. And my husband and I also work as a creative duo in Ginger and Carrot Productions. And we do marketing, content, and storytelling content as well. And we tend to work with BIPOC inclusive brands and allies because we're both Black and queer. So that is my summary.
Yeah, that's an amazing summary. I mean, everything you said just resonated so deeply, especially with like abundance being at the heart of a great leader. The reason why when I met you, I wanted to interview you is because I feel like we haven't gotten there in that conversation on scarcity and how it affects leadership. We still haven't gotten to that point. And I feel like the work that you do is so unique because it's hitting the core of the issue. And people would say, well, that sounds so like new age, abundance mindset, scarcity mindset. It's not even like it's new age. It's real and it has real choices and real outcomes for those choices. And that's why I really do like and appreciate the work that you do, because I truly think we have to realize that it starts with the mind, right? It starts with how we see ourselves up here, and how we see ourselves up here affects everything else. So I'm excited. I'm excited to talk to you, especially because of your diverse professional background, but also your interesting personal story as to like, how did you get there? Like, how did you get involved in not just coaching, but understanding the difference between coaching someone at the beginning or coaching someone towards the end of their career? Like, how do you get them in the thick of it? So we're going to talk about all of those things. But first, we do a pop culture segment. We always do a pop culture segment. And first of all, I thought about you being in Los Angeles, but I also have been thinking very much about like Victoria Monet, one of my favorite singers, entertainers, performers. And she talks about the power of manifestation. So people listening to the podcast, we're going to reference this article. But before we talk about Victoria Monet specifically, I want to ask you as a coach, right? Is manifestation real? If so, like, how can the principles behind it like help us to launch successful lives and careers?
Manifestation is as real as gravity, right? At the core of the definition of that word, what it means is that you are creating something such that it's apparent to the eye, and that's how we perceive reality. So even if you are a hustle and grind believer, and that's how you achieve every single goal, that is a way to manifest something, right? All you're doing is creating. So it's not a debate about whether or not it's real. It's a debate about what is the most easeful way to create things. That's
Yeah.
where people diverge on their philosophical beliefs. Some people believe in pain, no gain. Some people believe in hustle and grind. And I would be dishonest if I didn't say that a part of my journey included that. There was definitely a part of my journey where it was all about what I put in and doing twice as good for half as much. And sometimes that's your only lever to pull. And if that's what you have, use that. If you have the energy and the time and nothing else is apparent to you, use that because you can move forward that way. But as soon as you find that something is no longer serving you, as soon as you find that you're kind of on a hamster wheel and you're spinning your wheels a little bit, then it's time to tap into other means of creating. Other means like
Mhm.
tapping into luck, tapping into serendipity, tapping into your thoughts and beliefs and alignment and a bigger power, right? We're all interconnected. We're all
Mhm.
energetic beings. We have a collective energetic experience. So we perceive each other. Everything is just 1 or 2 degrees away. That means that there's other powers at play that create things. We know this because luck is real. Like, how do you
Mhm.
explain winning the lottery? Like, just in the most extreme example, how do you explain winning a game of Scrabble? Like, how do you explain the unexplainable? We know that there are things at play. So, really, it's how can we get on that flow? How can we get into the flow of ease so that things come a little bit more naturally, a little bit more easeful, and we're not straining ourselves and burning ourselves out doing things the hard way or waiting on a very particular outcome instead of allowing ourselves to be guided. That is the
Mhm.
process that I really love to sink my teeth into. But, and I know we'll talk about this a little bit later, oftentimes the way that manifestation and energy work is taught, it's very white male centered. And so
Mhm.
folks like you and me might hear some of that stuff and go, uh-uh, absolutely not. And I've had that
Yeah.
moment where I was like, what do you mean my thoughts create my reality? You trying to say it's my fault that I'm a descendant of enslaved people? Is that what
Mhm.
you're saying?
Oh
And
God.
like, best
Huh.
case scenario, a woke one will say, that's not what we're saying. Obviously, there are systems at play, and then they go right back to the rhetoric that they were teaching. So, what I've done in my journey and through my coaching is really decolonizing
Mhm.
the manifestation and the energy work conversation so that we can actually tap into that for our better good and know how to start thinking about it through our unique backgrounds.
Yeah, you're saying a lot, and you opened this up with a whole word. I feel like we're at dinner and we skipped the appetizer and went straight to the entree. Because no, you opened this up with a whole word. I honestly, I want to unpack some of the things you said. So first, I want to get on that point of flow and ease.
Mm.
One of the things that I don't know if you're familiar with this in entrepreneurs, but one of the things that I've been telling people is don't just build your company on what you think you should do. Look for the areas for which your energy is naturally aligned. So I've had conversations with friends and people who are founders who tell me, man, I wanted to start a podcast, but my energy was just so drained. And I tell them, I'm like, you're an artist. You don't have to do a podcast. Get online, do that video with the art, and then do the music in the background. Like, you don't have to be who you're not. And I think that there's this concept of, you're right, like manifestation has two coins. There's this concept of ease and flow. Like, yes, I do believe we are divinely created to do certain things. And in those areas, not that we won't have struggles, but we will definitely have a sense of flow, a sense of ease in doing things, almost a sense of attraction towards a particular thing, as you probably have with coaching. But then there's also this passivity involved in manifestation, almost like, if you're, like you said, if things aren't going right in your life, you can look to your mindset, you can create the vision board, et cetera, et cetera. But if you never really fully take that action, or if you never fully acknowledge that there are, yes, systems that stand in the way of me progressing and becoming who I want to be, and here's how I'll have to develop the political savvy to navigate those systems, manifestation can keep you stuck. So I think you incorporated how I feel about it, in that I do believe it is real, right? I do believe we can visualize things and come up with things, but I also think that a lot of it is our divine design. Like, you have to understand what you are here to do, and what is your, I guess we could say, like, your highest calling, as well as the systems that stand in place to prevent you from accessing that higher aspect of yourself. So I would say what you said exactly, like manifestation is real, but we got to go a bit deeper to try to figure out like how can I make the principles actually work for me rather than being like you said some whitewashed hippie stuff, you know?
And it's so interesting, right? Because it's like people think they even the term principles, I'm finding like some resistance to that because I'm like,
Mm,
it's not a Bible that someone wrote that like we just need to follow. Like every individual has their own way of creating. Like I almost want to like
yeah.
substitute the word manifestation with creating because
Mm,
that will I think a lot of ears will perk up when I say create, right? It's like everyone creates in their own way. Like if I told you to draw something, one person might grab a pen, one person might grab a brush, one person might grab a pencil. Like even in that simple exercise, like we all create differently. So the key, and this is what we're not taught to do as Black women, the
cool.
key is to become an expert on who you are and how you're designed,
Yeah.
right? It's not
Mm,
looking at what would be the smart thing, the safe thing, the good thing. It's how am I uniquely designed? Like you said, where is my energy naturally flowing?
mm,
Now, don't get that confused with if I experience challenges, if I'm being pushed outside of my comfort zone, that means I'm experiencing resistance. Absolutely not. It doesn't mean that life will never get hard. Those challenging experiences are the manifestation coming in. And
yeah. Ooh,
oftentimes, when
yeah.
you're taught to, especially when you get into this world, you think, oh, it's not easy anymore. Something is wrong. When you ask for a big thing, it's like, sure, but you have to become someone else to get that big thing. So we live in a yes world. We live in a yes
Mm,
universe. So you ask the universe, hey, I want a $10 million business. Universe is like, yes. And here are all of the challenges that will help you rise to the occasion to grow that business. So you're thinking that you're getting further away from your goal when you're becoming exactly the person that you need to become in order to get this business. So you have to look at things at a macro of like, how
mm,
is this going to help me become and evolve and expand? You know? So there's a
yeah.
difference between that and when something's not aligned. And I feel like getting good at manifestation is really just honestly learning the difference, learning the
Yeah.
discernment, and being okay with making mistakes and realizing that if you want it, just about anything can be flipped to your benefit. It might not start there, but any negative experience could be flipped to a fail up moment. And that's the game. Is just
Yeah.
failing up, failing up, failing up. That's the game. That's how you get good at anything.
It's crazy. It's crazy that you say this because I think that this is something that I've been going through exactly in my life and in my journey as I look back on becoming an entrepreneur and I felt like I was supposed to be this type of entrepreneur. And once again, whatever people believe in, I believe in God. God was like, no, like this was not your design. Like literally, I would try different types of entrepreneurship and I would be drained. Like I would feel like my body would be like drained and fighting against it. And I would say like that's resistance, not like the
Right.
racism that I face, like going to accelerators. Oh, like that, like you said, that's my divine test of like, am I going to continue to fight for what I believe my dream is in the
Right.
midst of all of this calamity? I think resistance is really like when you feel in your body and in your gut, this is not for me. Like, this ain't it. And I don't feel that sense of connection with the work that I needed to. And I think especially in the entrepreneurship game, a lot of us are motivated by money. And it's like, oh, like I just gotta do this like high priced, high margin company, et cetera, et cetera. But what if you're working on that company and your soul just isn't into it? Your spirit is just saying, nah, this isn't it. And that's what I was experiencing. I was putting cash flow above what I knew I was called to do. Literally, I
Right.
had that conversation with somebody the other day and I experienced enough of the heartache and trying to make things work that weren't I wasn't supposed to do. I know you're into human design, so you understand that we are all designed differently and it's about tapping into that. So I feel like I totally get what you're saying in that like the external forces around us will serve to shape us into who we need to be. But at the same time, there is that level of resistance that we can sometimes experience internally when we know that we're doing things for money, for clout,
Yeah.
for fame. Our heart is not in the right place. And I can say this and say my heart wasn't in the right place, having become an entrepreneur and felt that scarcity. We're gonna get into that, of having to make a lot of money quickly. My heart wasn't in the right place. And until my heart was
Yeah.
aligned with what I knew I was called to do, there was no ease. There was literally no
Mm.
ease. It was all me forcing it.
I think you can always listen to your body.
Mm,
I knew, like, for me, I've struggled with PCOS, like, growing up, and now I'm, almost asymptomatic. Like, I have
mm,
regular cycles. They are only minimally painful. I'm working on getting them pain-free, and, like, I'm not on birth control, right? So it took a lot of changes to get here, and I can always rely on my cycle to tell me when I'm out of alignment. So even
mhm,
though there's so much craziness going on where we're like, can I do this? And I'm experiencing the doubt and the discomfort because I live outside of my comfort zone. I pitched a tent, okay? Like, I'm just waiting to get back into my comfort zone. It's not happening anytime soon. But my health is like singing my praises. I even down to my knees, like I experience less knee pain. Like
mhm.
I can climb up any staircase, no problem, without any breath, like little things like that. And my body rewards me when I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and we're not even just talking about movement, like when I'm working on what I'm supposed to be working on, when I have the right people in my life, my body literally rewards me. So if you really just are like, I cannot tell if this is resistance or if this is me being outside of my comfort zone, look back to your body and, like, how is your health? Are you tired? Are you exhausted? Do you get good sleep? Like, you can just go right back to those things, and that can tell you right there whether or not you need to make a tweak and getting closer to your purpose and alignment. Because when you're doing something that you're meant to do, and it's like, even though it gets hard, your body's still on board for that. So that is like for me kind of like the gauge that I always use. I'm like, well, she's still happy, so I know I'm on the right path.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's great because I also have PCOS, and I think like learning that balance, especially like, having dealt with it in my late teens and now my early 20s, like learning that balance and also like learning, hey, like your body will literally tell you when you're out of balance is something that I'm learning right now. And I think what you're saying is spot on, 100% spot on, in that like you should listen to your body and tune into that. What you're talking about when you say that when you're supposed to do something, your body is going to keep you doing it. That's literally me and my business. That's me and my business, honestly, because I got the like, we could say divine cue and divine nudge to move into like, software models, more scalable models. And at first I was like, man, like, I'm trying to make quick money. I don't want to do this, da da da. Da. But the sense of alignment I felt in doing that and switching to that, even the like resources I began receiving and everything, like I think when we are aligned, like you said, with who we truly are, that is when things begin to happen. I have
Mm.
PCOS. I had to make a shift for me to even lose weight. For those who know, like weight is a huge issue as well. So I even started losing weight when I released certain things that were holding me back. And that could be a
Come
whole
on.
nother episode, honestly. Skin
That
cleared,
could literally be a whole other
everything.
episode.
No, it could. My skin cleared up and everything, like, because I had the acne, I had the weight issues, I had everything alongside PCOS. And it's funny that you brought that up because sometimes we don't understand, like, okay, like reproductive health, women's health, but you're right. Like, you can use like your we could say your cycle as evidence that hey, everything is working properly in
Right.
my life, right? And I think that I've learned to tune into that. I think now like we as women are talking about like our luteal phase and we're talking about different things that we weren't talking about before. So I think I really do like and appreciate that. Okay, so let's get to this one or two questions about Victoria Monet. So the article that we have, and I'm gonna like link it for y'all people listening to the podcast. The article references Victoria Monet's breakthrough success after working for years as a songwriter in Los Angeles. While Victoria Monet has succeeded, so she's a 3-time Grammy Award winner and won for Best New Artist at 34, right?
Mm.
Many people are still waiting for their breakthrough moment to come. I could think of like, as someone who has followed her career, I could only imagine how she felt, like, not only in an industry rife with racism, sexism, all the other isms, but having to be in the shadows essentially of Ariana Grande, as her writer. You don't think you're going to get a chance when your gift is tied to somebody else's breakthrough. So I could only imagine what she was going through. But my question for you is, for those people who are in Victoria Monet's situation, you're in LA, so you probably meet a lot of them. Big dreams, goals, etc. But things haven't happened yet. Now I'm in my 30s. I'm no longer young. Like, in the meantime, how do they stay motivated? How do they keep believing?
I think motivation is overrated.
Oh, okay.
It really is. I'm not a very motivated person. I'm not a very disciplined person. And that's why we talk about alignment. Because, and I don't know Victoria Monet personally, but I imagine that through and through, she's an artist. And when you're an artist, you have to be an artist, even
Yeah.
if it goes nowhere. That's just what you're on this planet to do. How many amazing artists are right now teaching at a high school, creating the next Victoria Monet, right? Like, artists are just needed at every level of society. They're just needed. Whether you're a mom and you love to paint, and that's something that you can do to bond with your kid, or whether you're on the stage receiving your 18 millionth Grammy and your kid's on their phone not giving a crap about it. Like, artists are needed. And when you're an artist, nothing ought to stop you from creating. So this idea of I'm in the trenches, I'm in someone else's shadow, is a fundamental misunderstanding of what's going on here. And this is why I talk about abundant thinking. It's not about somebody else's shadow. First of all, someone else's success is evidence that your success is possible. You should be worried when no one is winning. Like, if you think about it like this, I'm a history nerd, and there was we're going dark. But like over in Eastern Europe and Chernobyl, there was this massive like atomic bomb that went off that wasn't supposed to go off. And they were testing it in a facility. And it's very similar to the Titanic story where they were like, it will never go off like on accident. It was like, that'll never happen. What happened? It went off. And literally these nuclear toxins were just all over the country, and the entire country had to evacuate, and it's unlivable. Like, you, to this day, you cannot go there because it's radioactive. They had to kill off every animal because they couldn't risk the radioactive, like, animals, like, going in and, like, spreading it globally. It would have been a global pandemic. It was one of the biggest failures in history, right? That country is no longer and never, ever again will ever exist, right? That is what you should be afraid of. You should be afraid of the moment where there is nothing happening for anyone and this whole thing is a big shutdown. So we have to start thinking about when you see success around you, especially the closer it is to you, a friend, a sibling, a parent, a child, someone that lives in your town, the closer they are to you, the more possible that level of success is for you. That's why I really believe in creating proximity in order for us to expand, because that's what that does. We're all empathic, we're all energetic. So proximity is everything, right? And Victoria Monet kept that proximity. That is huge for manifestation and expansion. She kept writing songs. She kept becoming an artist. She kept honing her craft because that's what she would do, whether or not she was writing for Ariana Grande. That's what any artist who truly loves what they do would do. It was just a matter of when, not if, she was going to have that breakthrough moment. And so we have to stop thinking that you're in the shadows, you're below and they're above, you're outside and they're in. it's not a win or lose. This isn't a race. This is just your life. How do
Yeah.
you want to live your life? Not in comparison to someone else, not for some external validation. How do you want to show up in the world every single day? And what do you want to be remembered for? Are you doing that? In any capacity, are you doing that? That is
Yeah.
the only question that needs to be answered. And that's how you get on alignment.
Yeah. I feel like, yeah, I feel called out because I said the shadow. Because I said the shadows. But I think you're right. Like the narrative is always this person is a star. This person is not the star. And I'm sure she heard that thing of like, oh, well, you're just great behind the scenes. You're great behind the scenes. Why are you expecting any more? You have the credits on the songs. You're getting
Yeah.
paid. Da, 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 da. But you're right. Like she knew you said something very, very powerful. Like she knew who she was.
Right.
And even if people didn't see it in her, she saw it in herself. And I feel like sometimes we go through tests as well. And I don't know if you have any knowledge or wisdom on that aspect as well, but I feel like sometimes we go through tests and that we are tested to see, is this
If we
really
really
who
want
you
it.
are, right? Because you want to be famous or you want to be seen, or is this who you are because like you said, if you don't create spiritually, you're going to die. And I think that's where she was, where like, even if I'm not, on the front page, I feel like this is what I'm here to do. I
Right.
feel like this is my divine purpose. So if I'm not doing it, I feel out of sorts. And sometimes people think you're crazy because it's like, dang, you're crazy. Girl, you could have went to college, got a regular job. Why did you do that?
You
Jump
also
it.
have
Hop
to
in.
think that people project, and sorry to interrupt, but people
No
project
problem.
their own beliefs
Mhm.
onto you. Everything that people say to you is how they feel about themselves. So if
Ooh.
someone's speaking power into you, that's a powerful person, right?
Mm,
Like there's power in there, whether they're tapped into it or not. So anyone that come to her to make her feel like you're in someone else's shadow, that's how they feel about
yeah.
themselves. Anyone that, it's just like that moment, that iconic moment in 2009 at the VMAs where Kanye got on the stage and was like, Beyonce had the best video of all time. We'll
Yeah.
never forget it. We'll never forget it. And Beyonce was like, Taylor, get up on the stage. Why? Because Beyonce was like, I've won this award like 15 times. Like, I'm grown. I had my moment where I was 19, 20 and needing every little award. Like, I'm in a different stage in my career. I don't want to rob that of someone else. She knew that literally she didn't even have to give a speech to be who she was as an artist. That's abundant thinking. That's abundant thinking. She never thought of Taylor Swift as competition. And now, more than a decade later, two people still dominating in the industry right now. And it's true. So it is, you really have to reframe things and stop looking at what someone else has because we don't know what they're experiencing. I don't know what it's like to be Ariana Grande. I don't know what
Yeah.
it's like to be Victoria Monet. You've got to love your life and give yourself a reason to love your own life,
Absolutely.
regardless of what anyone else is experiencing, because
Mhm.
that's your path. We don't know what's going to happen when she's 44.
Yeah. I mean, once again, you're saying something so very important, but I also do think that we tend to do the opposite. Because you talked about proximity, right? We
Yeah.
tend to withdraw from people for
Mm,
whom we feel are farther ahead of us. And then there's this whole
yeah.
concept of like intimidating. Oh, this person's intimidating to me. Oftentimes when we look deeper, what makes them intimidating is you feel like they're on a level that you're not
Yeah.
on. And in fact, we always say like, you shouldn't want to be the smartest person in the room because you shouldn't want to be the smartest person in the room. Like you shouldn't be
Yeah.
the richest in any room you're in. You shouldn't be the smartest or the most accomplished in any room you're in. But unfortunately, I think the human ego wants to withdraw from spaces for which we are not, or from which we are not the top dog.
Right.
So I think it takes a level of humility to stand and learn and be a student, because I do hear a lot of people saying so and so intimidates me. or this person thinks they're better than me. And a lot of the time, like those are projections of our own. You talked about other people projecting onto us. We're projecting onto others our own low self-esteem, our own
Yes.
lack of belief in ourselves, which is why, we get jealous, we get envious, we throw up the towel, and then we stop calling this friend that now has a business. We stop,
Right.
dating this person that got the degree that we wanted to get. So I
Right.
see a lot of that pattern, and I'm like, man, I wish we knew that thing about proximity, that like, if it's happening for your neighbor, it's going to happen for you. But once again, we retreat from people that we feel are threatening to us because of their progression.
That's why it is so important to understand how energy works. It is so important because when you realize that someone else's success is your own, you start to
Mm,
really celebrate that. You start to feel relieved. You don't want a Chernobyl situation. You don't want a situation where none of us are winning. We've got to flee the entire country. And that's the end of that story. No, we live in a world where we can look to our left and our right and see someone who's doing amazing, even if it's in a field or an area that you don't want. But like you see, hey, you know what? They're traveling a lot more, or they really came up financially in the last 2 or 3 years, or I'm noticing that. Keep those people close. Like you said, it's so hard to find people who are genuinely happy for you when you start to win. I think it's harder
mm,
to find that
hard.
than the people who will show up for you when times are hard. Everybody loves to be a hero. Everybody loves to be the smartest one in the room, the most interesting person in the room, the save the day.
Mm,
It's hard to be, it's like humble's a word, but I feel like it's humble exponential. It's like you need to be curious and earnest. Like you need to take yourself back to that kindergarten level where you're just happy to be there and everything is fun and we're running around and any kind of joy experience is the collective joy. Like you need to get back to like that childlike naivete because it will, first of all, it's a great filter for anyone who is intimidated by you, which we don't need. And it draws in people a lot higher. I hear so much about the lateral networking of like network with people at your level. And I think when people say that, they think financial, they're like, you know, people who are just as broke as you. Lateral
mm,
networking can also be mindset. If you have a millionaire
mm,
mindset, but you're not yet there, you're still gonna attract millionaires. Like you're still gonna go to the party
yeah,
and the one millionaire that's there is chatting you up. So like that lateral networking, it can be lateral in a lot of ways. It can be that you have this
yeah.
shared interest. You both
Mm,
prioritize your health. You both have the same mindset. You both have similar ideas. That's also
mm,
lateral,
yeah.
So that's what I love about that. It's like you don't use your jealousy as a teaching tool to
Mm,
be like, "Oh, it looks like that's what my desire is telling me that I want."
yeah,
But then recognize that this is just nothing but evidence. Evidence that what you want is this close because otherwise why would you be anywhere near it at all?
yeah. Woof. Listen, I needed that. Okay, y'all, we're about to close out Pop Purpose because that could have been a whole separate episode. But thank you, Nisa, for Nisa, for the real talk. I think we all needed that. I think we all needed that battery in our back to let go of the scarcity mentality, let go of the victim mentality. Yikes, not me get another idea for another episode. Okay. I just got an episode idea on scarcity mentality and victim mentality. Anyway, we'll be in touch about that. I got my little PR person hat on. We'll be in touch about that. But I want to talk about who you are as a person. So we
Mm.
divide this episode into 3 parts: people, career, culture. And you talked about being an empathic person, and I also am an empath. And I know how hard that is, especially when man, I forgot what book I read. It was like The Empowered Empath or something because, growing up hypersensitive. Oh my God. Like it can
Ooh,
go one of 2 ways. It can go, literally depression, anxiety weighing us down, or it can go empowered to use our gifts to help other people. So I wanted to tap into that. And that was my first question for you. in this people section, you say that you have a super sensitive personality. Are you an empath or an empathic person? If so, like, when did you first notice this gift in you?
Oh my gosh. I'm a super empathic, and I saw it as a burden for so long. It felt like the world was so overstimulating. It felt like I grew up in an abusive household. So I grew up
Mm,
learning that I had to be hyper vigilant about how everyone else was feeling. So me being empathic on top of that, it was just such an enormous responsibility that I took on. And in a lot of ways I was taught, but unlearning that was like the journey of my 20s and 30s, is like
mm,
realizing that everyone is responsible for their own feelings. And it's not my job to monitor anyone else unless I feel like my safety is at risk. And, that is a day to day grind of realizing, you know what, that person's having a bad day or a hard time. And I don't need to add to it, but I also don't need to absorb it. And
ooh,
so I had to cultivate my own self-care practices of like detethering myself from things. I had to practice being more honest in the moment. I had to get better at just having boundaries and saying no to things. And that's incredibly difficult for me to do. And like it was a lot. Like I only recently, like maybe in the last like year or so, started to recognize it as a gift because I saw it as just the strength that it took to continue to show up that way. Because what I
mm,
could have done was shut down. I could
yeah,
have just said, I'm shutting down. We are closed for business. No more feelings because this is too much. And that's what most people do. There's so many things that we do to like numb ourselves, to disassociate because it can be overwhelming. What I learned instead was how to take even better care of myself so that I had the capacity to exist in what I consider my bigness. Because when you're on like that, when you're tuned in and tapped in and you're aware like that, it is so powerful. People feel very seen. I'm the person that people will come to at an event or at a party and admit something that they haven't even told their spouses. Like I'm that person.
yeah. Mhm,
And I don't and this is my flow, right? I don't when I go into a room, I don't go around and have a list of people. I'm like, I need to meet so and so, so and so, so and so. I just
mhm,
stand around and see who comes to me because I know that it's that powerful, it's that magnetic, and every time it
mhm,
works out. And that's what I figured out about myself. And so now I see it as a gift because I'm like, oh, all I have to do is sit back and see what happens and see who's drawn to that because I know anyone that's drawn to my energy is someone who is a match. So I
ooh,
don't really have to go out of
mm,
my way to find people that are a match because I know that I have this very dramatic repelling effect where people are either viscerally annoyed with me inexplicably. Like I can list names, okay?
yeah,
And I mean
mm,
my own mother, right? She was just like viscerally just like so just against my energy. And then there's other people who are drawn to me and they're like they're just like, "You're this person that I have to have in my life forever." And it happens a little too quickly for my comfort, but very quickly for a lot of people. And so I rely on that truth. That's my truth. I rely on that. And I realize, like, I don't have to force things. I can just let things flow because my energy is so strong. And so right now, that is
mm,
how I leverage the power. Now, I'm sure there's so much more. I mean, I would love to learn how to heal. One thing that I've been learning so much about is hypnosis
yeah,
and recording like self hypnosis tracks and powerful visualizations because I'm a powerful storyteller too. And I'm like, that's where I see it going. But I'm just now getting accustomed to the fact that it's a gift because for the longest time, it felt like the biggest burden ever.
oh my
But
god.
that's normal for a lot of us, I think.
I feel like so, the reason why I had to ask you that question is I feel like empaths have a way of recognizing each other. And I just felt like I recognized it in you from the first conversation. And it's by no mistake that you're a coach. And my next question is going to talk about that, because I think that there are certain careers that naturally empathic people flow in. Like, we've been talking about flow this whole conversation. Naturally empathic people flow in certain careers, and the energy flows to almost heal other people. And in a way, empaths are healers. I believe empaths are the extensions of God's hand on this earth, right? They come to heal other people. I grew up an extrovert and an empath. So I kept on, I had those dual sides to me. And people would be like, well, sometimes you're like so outgoing and you're there. And then other times you're retreating, like, oh my God, like I can't do this. Because I was so sensitive to the energy around me. I felt that I was crazy because I had this one side of me that I loved being around people, but oh my God, like some people, especially people that didn't like me, being around them was just draining because almost like I could feel the negativity coming towards me. I don't know if
Yes.
you have that experience. And people would be like, well, why don't you want to hang with my friend? There's my mutual friend. I'm like, oh my God, this person, like every time they look at me, I could tell that they hate me. And it was draining to me at first. Like, when you're young and you're insecure and you can sense that people don't like you, it drains you. And I had
Yeah.
to learn to become an empowered empath. I had to learn to stand in who I was and not retreat from the world because of being judged or because of, feeling different, feeling things very deeply. I was always told, you're too intense, you're too this, you're too that. And I had to learn, like, wow, it's really my special gifts that make me too much for some people. And the same thing that you have is the same thing that I get, where like I'm too much for some people. I'm too deep. I'm too this. I'm too ambitious. I'm too this and that. And I'm too passionate. I'm too loud. And I've just always had to be like, man, damn, like where do I fit in? But I think the
Right.
gift of being an empath is because you feel simultaneously connected and then still very alone. You know how to navigate that gray area with other people, that gray area of connection, and really see
Mm.
people. And I think that that's something that has, blessed me tremendously. It gives me the hosting power that I had, and I see for you, it gives you the coaching power that you have, like that you can really connect with people on a spiritual level almost. So I had to learn, girl, I had to learn how to manage that gift because it had me simultaneously wanting to connect and then wanting to run away. And
Yeah.
that duality was hard to balance.
I think there is such a huge difference too between like it's something that you said that resonated with me so much where you're like people were telling you this and that and like you're too intense. The journey of my life was allowing myself to be in my bigness. Like, oh, you're
Mhm.
too deep. I got that one a lot from
I get that one a
any
lot.
contact,
Yeah.
romantic, friendship, professional. You're too deep. And
Mm,
I got here deep and it is deep. And what I realize is like, there's a difference between fitting in and belonging. I was
yeah.
never put on this planet to fit in. Never.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's not going to happen. I gave up. It's not going to happen. And I was like, oh, it's because I'm in a white space. I go to a black space. It's the same thing. I was
Oof,
never
forget
put
about it.
here to fit in. But
Mm,
belonging is something we could all use. Belonging is
mm,
where you're accepted and loved and valued. But fitting in is where you are going along to get along. It's where you're a puzzle piece and you fit the picture just because you happen to have that shape that they're looking for. But so many of us were taught to fit in, but we're not taught to create belonging. Belonging
ooh,
is
touch
community,
on that.
belonging is connection, and it has nothing to do with you being shaped and molded in a way for my comfort. There are people in my life that
Mm,
make me a little bit uncomfortable or that do things that I don't approve of. But like, it's not for me to approve of. It's not for me
yeah.
to feel comfortable with. They're on a journey and they're going to learn that on their own. And anytime they need my support, they can ask for the type of support they need and I'll offer that. But it's like no one can take you off your path. You're thinking how you're
Mm,
thinking, you're moving how you're moving. No one can take you off that. So it's not my job to fix anyone or to correct anyone, right? It's my job to offer support. the way that they define it, because that's the only kind of support you'll ever really receive. So that is a distinction that I had to drop. And once I let go of like the need to fit in, like it's so cliche, but we all do it. We all like don't talk or move or don't move in certain situations. Why? Because it would be really awkward and we would stick out or we would stand out or it would be uncomfortable. It is so much easier said than done. And when you get really good at creating belonging and you're less concerned with fitting in, life gets easier.
Oh
You'll
my,
ruffle some feathers, but life gets easier.
crazy. Crazy how you're talking about this, because this was the exact conversation I was having with someone. So y'all podcast people gonna hop in. You probably experience this with your clients. You start your entrepreneurial career thinking friends are gonna be happy for me. Opportunities are gonna flow, da 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 da. Friends dropping off, like friends from my past life do
Lies.
not speak to me. Friends from my past life do not know my number unless they need something. The
Right.
distance has become the Cold War. No conversation, no texting, no nothing. And I'm like, okay, I'm going through a season in my life where, dang, I feel like I'm losing everybody.
Mm,
Oh my God. I'm losing those that new people are coming in, new
of
people are coming
course.
in, but I'm losing the people that I thought would be friends for years, the people that I
Right.
thought would stick with me for years. And I had this feeling of this too-ness. Oh, well,
Mm,
just too ambitious, too loud, too deep. Stop asking me these questions. Stop doing this or that. But oddly, I was telling someone the other day, I still carry those insecurities from my childhood of being too much. I was a high achieving kid, but
mhm.
I still felt like I was too much. And then once again, you talked about Black women and how we're naturally trained to police ourselves. I grew up in New York, in the Caribbean American community. So there's this natural like way of you must present yourself this way, da 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 da. And people put you in boxes. And as I become an adult, I'm like, man, I've reclaimed all the parts of myself that people said couldn't coexist. Like I couldn't be academic and also into hip hop. I couldn't be spiritual and also practical. I began reclaiming all the two-ness. Like, oh, I'm too much in this area, too much in that area. But as that happened, I realized like I'm uniquely positioned to create belonging. Same thing that you said, because of the fact that I think empaths have the gift of authenticity.
Yeah.
And maybe because we're so self-aware, we understand our authenticity maybe more than a lot of other people. Like you talked about like fitting in and the puzzle piece. Sometimes you look at like, man, I can't fit in the puzzle. I just can't. I just can't fit in. I'm not even going to try to fit in. So yeah, I'm going to be the odd one out, but when you're the odd one out, you're uniquely designed and almost uniquely equipped to create the spaces that others do not have. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be necessarily in business. It could be, we could think of like today's content creators. I could think of like Kelly Stamps. Like she gives me like, growing up, people might have thought she was a bit different, but she has a community of people that really resonate with her. That's just one example. We can think of like artists, we can think of writers, we can think of coaches, the therapists and the coaches that hold space, literally emotional space for people to belong. And then we can think of entrepreneurs like myself who are creating platforms rooted in trying to provide opportunities where there are none. So I think that the gift of authenticity that the empaths have it is a strong gift and it has to be wielded and yielded properly. But what I will say is like when you finally do tap into who you are, you will become powerful. You'll become extremely powerful. And yes, people will drop out of your life. I'm sure you have those stories too of I'm trying to level up and folks are just falling off, falling off, falling off. But I've had to learn like it's the energetic lack of
Yeah.
alignment. And I'm no longer playing small in this season. And that's why that's happening. Cause I'm done with playing small.
They don't even know what's happening either. You were like, "I'm sure I have
Mm.
stories." I'm like, "I wish it were a story," because it's just like point
What?
1, point 2. Like
Yeah.
there was no explanation. It just happened so naturally and organically in a way. And
Mm.
I had to make peace with that because I'm realizing that I'm creating space for a new community, a new season. And then there were some folks that were kind of in the middle ground that really
Yeah.
stepped up, that really
Mm.
surprised me. And I was like, oh. And so, what I love about this is as hard as it is, it's just like the most honest way that I've ever lived. Like I can
Mm,
truly, truly say, no matter what's happening, no matter if I feel like I'm doing it right or not, I've never been so true to myself than I am right now. And that's not an easy path, but it is a peaceful path internally because there's nothing that I'm doing that I feel like I shouldn't be doing that. I need to stop that. Like that feeling when you know you're in the wrong job or you know you're in the wrong relationship and you're like, this isn't going anywhere, but I
yeah,
just don't
and
have the guts to end it.
you
I
get
can
those
honestly
feelings.
say that where I am now is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm.
And
Ooh,
not a lot of people can say that. And when that's true, things can get hard, but you know that your only job is to weather the storm versus
mm,
abandoning ship.
yeah. I feel you when you said, like, it's not even a story, because I wish it was a story. It's not even a story. Folks just it's almost like I disappeared off the face of the earth for some of these people. It's not a story. We don't know each other anymore. We don't speak anymore. Like, it's not a
Right.
story. I wish it was a story because there was no real falling out. It was just I glowed up, they went in that direction, I went in that direction, we never spoke again. And it's like it's one of those things where I also am experiencing what you have experienced, where people from my past that I never thought I would reconnect with are circling back, this time with different intention, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Whoa." So I think, like, in the shift of, like, answering to who going from, like, Imma hide and try to be like everybody else, or I'm gonna hide who I am, Imma tune down my light, whatever, to like, "Oh, I'm gonna embrace the fullness of myself, and whoever doesn't like it can, like, kiss my ass, whatever, get to the bag, okay?" That is a power move, and I think that
Yeah.
sets the stage for it. I often hear people say, like, that's what they did before they had that breakthrough. They just stopped playing for other people's approval, and then everything fell into place, especially, like, for those of us who are called to lead, it you have to just stop with this, "I'm playing for their approval." You gotta stop because you'll reach, like, where you wanna go, and then you'll still be thinking, "What is that person doing? What is that person doing? What is that person doing?" And you really do have to embrace that, and I think going back to, like, what you said about knowing in your body, and we've had that conversation at length today. I think empaths, part of the reason why they have the gift of authenticity is because they feel things physically almost. And people would marvel and they'd say, like, how could you feel this is not right for you? Oh, I felt it in my body. I just had the understanding this ain't it. And then when I would, especially when I would do job interviews, then when I would get the we regret to inform you, man, I already knew this wasn't a match. You didn't have to tell me what I already sensed in my body. This was not a match. So I think that it's about understanding what we carry and being true to what we carry. So I really do
Mm.
appreciate that. This episode is just this episode is talking about everything that I've been struggling with for the past like couple of days, because I was just talking about healing the inner child, and you talked about like growing up as an empath, and feeling like you're responsible for everybody else's feelings. That is literally empaths tend to be what they call parentified or even victims of emotional incest. In
Yeah.
that sometimes psychological boundaries can be crossed very, very early. And it can result in us, when you look at your friendships or even your relationships, you're always the caregiver, you're always the caretaker, you're always the person taking on somebody else's burden. And as an empath, I've had to learn boundaries. It is not my job to be everyone's caretaker,
You
caregiver.
also learn that that's
You
not
know,
love, right? It's like
mhm,
I thought that caretaking was love, and if that's what you think, it creates this vulnerability for people to take real advantage of you. And it's a slippery slope because then you overcorrect and you're like,
mhm,
"Well, I can't let anyone in." And it's like, "No, I can always be emotionally open and vulnerable. That does not mean that you can come into my space and act however you please." So it's
yeah,
like learning how to be open, but also having your boundaries at the same time, even if it's just with you. Like something I heard on We Can Do Hard Things, this podcast that I just am like obsessed with recently, they said that boundaries is not you need to do this. Boundaries is this is how I will respond in these scenarios. It's
yeah,
about self like alignment and control. It's not about controlling others. And that clarification was so huge for me because people hear boundaries and they go, you're stopping me from doing something. Or people are afraid to set boundaries because they're like, I'm getting in the way of that person getting what they want. It's not about them. It's about your response. It's about what you will do. If you continue to speak to me in that manner, I won't be responding to that. If you
Mhm.
continue to show up unannounced, I will not be opening the door. If you
Yeah.
continue to,
Mm.
right, this is how I respond. Even if it's with yourself, like for me, I have to take breaks and I have to eat and I have to put that boundary down. I'm like, I am going to take a break right now. I'm going to take the dog out. I'm going to take myself out for a walk because I need walks too. It's like those are boundaries all about how we will respond. And over time, that's how you regain your empathic power, like you said, because you can still be that sensitive, soft, like care about every detail, moved by every sob story. Like you can still be that person. You just have to learn how to harness it as a power instead of muddying it as, something that can really take hold of your whole life.
Yeah, I feel, woof, Lord, this episode's taking a different turn. I'm taking a different turn, but I know, but I'm welcoming it though because so I just a side story about me. I don't know if your childhood experience was any similar, but I grew up with an older sibling that had autism. My sister,
Oh,
my Irish twin, she's July the year before. I'm the November of the year after. So we're like seven, man, 17 months apart. I don't know. We're very close in age. And
mm,
she had autism and there were times where the autism was pretty severe. And I grew up being a caretaker and literally like I'm still processing that. As an empath, I'm still processing growing up being a caretaker and also being the peacemaker in my home when there were things that happened. And I think as I look back on my life, I'm like, yes, I attracted friends, people in my life that saw me as a resource to be used, that saw me as, someone to help them, to be the therapist friend, to be the motivator, to be the person that energized them when they were down. But man, recently went through this period where I was like, man, who's doing that for me?
right.
Couldn't find anybody doing that for me. And I said, you know what? I deserve better. And I deserve better. And I finally have, I don't want to say cut off, but I distanced myself from the people that were draining me. And I think entrepreneurship, I'm not sure if you tackle this with your work with entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurship forced me to confront the weak boundaries that I had. Because now I was like, man, now my energy has to go into something that is bigger than me. And if I'm in a, relationship or whatever, where this person is depending heavily on me in an unhealthy way, that is not what I deserve. I deserve the love that I give to others back. And I think that that's the empowerment of understanding like you're more than a resource to be used. You are more than your support and your motivation. And if anybody listening is an empath, like you are more than a therapist. You're not even anybody's therapist. Do not get into anything where you are a therapist for someone. Don't take that on. But some of us grew up what I would call enmeshed emotionally. And that's why unhealthy attachments form very quickly in friendships and other forms. And we got to learn our worth. We got to learn our worth and know our worth.
It's so true. And I know with Black women it's hard, and we're two smart women right here, and just like that, you probably experienced this where like every other word that comes out of your mouth is like rocking that person's world, where it's just like, oh my God. And like I talk to people and they start taking notes, like, and I'm just like, I thought we were chilling. Like, and they literally
Yeah.
will start taking notes. And I have to like, that's my current challenge, where I'm like, do I just charge people to talk to them, period? Because where does this get like reciprocal, And that's what I'm
Mhm.
learning right now, where I'm like, that's why I just lead with my coaching, especially when I'm in a situation where it's not a friend thing, which
Yeah.
for me is pretty obvious because if it's a friend thing, I will be talking about, the medical drama that I just wrapped up. I will be talking about my dog. I'll be talking about the cookies that I ate, the pancakes that I'm still like perfecting that recipe. That's a
Mhm.
whole story. That's a whole podcast right there. But as soon as we start talking business and
That is.
personal growth and
Yeah.
development, all things that I'm very passionate about. It's like that's something that I need to learn to be like, instead of let's hang out, it's here's my calendar link because the next time we talk about this, it is not going to be for free. Like, because I
Yeah.
know I
True.
have so much value and it does come very easily to me. And it's very easy to just think, well, it's so easy and it would be no big deal. That's exactly the thing that you should be charging a lot for is the thing that comes naturally and easy for you that offers so much value for others. So getting used to recognizing that and recognizing like your gifts, literally how they feel, and don't take them for granted. Like
Mm.
be grateful for your gifts, respect your gifts, and charge for your gifts. Just because there is this energy exchange monetarily does not mean that you're being unethical. It's actually your responsibility to create that reciprocal exchange
Oh
because
my
the
God.
body resists when that reciprocity isn't there. And you're doing people a favor by asking them to rise to the occasion. One of my favorite quotes about charging just in general, just charging people for your services is that money, all the price is, all that transaction is a beautiful filter of finding the right people to work with. All it
Mm.
is like this permission slip. That's all it is. And so that really resonated with me because I was like, oh yeah, like I'm not taking anything from anyone. I'm giving them something. And this helps me to align with the right people because anyone who doesn't value it enough to invest in it, maybe it's not the right time, maybe it's not what they need, then that means you don't need what I have to offer. That's what that means.
Yeah.
So that was like a big shift that I had to make. And I think a lot of Black women need to be taught this because we're taught greatness comes from strife. And it's like greatness comes from your ease, that thing that you can just do and switch on and it's no big deal. And everyone's like, how did you do that? That's your thing. And that should not be cheap.
Yikes. 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 Okay. All right. Y'all got a preview. Y'all got a preview. Because I feel like this episode, oh my God, I was planning one thing, but it took a whole nother thing. But yes, y'all, thank you for coming along with us on this journey. This is an amazing, amazing episode. Yes, and we will be back. Okay. So this is Surayya from Purposeful Professional Media, the podcast for the people, your career, the culture, and I'm out. Bye.